go. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the February 19th Octant community meeting. Jonas is he's out today. He's not feeling well, so I'll be running the whole thing with help from Sam and Milan. They are here, and I'm going to force them to give updates on stuff. Not really, just casually suggested. So first things first, I would like to start off with the security fix that went into Octant last week. So there is a security vulnerability posted up on GitHub. You can see, thanks to Jack Wink, who reported this issue. It was found through evaluation of the tool. It was basically it was remote, with RCE, remote code execution, because we weren't validating the origin header on the WebSocket stream. So yeah, it's fixed. It's embarrassing. It's fixed. It's embarrassing because of how much fun I made of Zoom when they did the exact same thing, and then we had the same bug. So that's but
it came back to bite you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay. Hey, great work of you guys to turn around so quickly. So
thanks. Yeah, and thank you, Michael, for helping to coordinate all that through the VMware security team. That was great. So moving on, all that information is there in the security advisory that's posted on GitHub. It's public. You can see it. So definitely update to the latest Octant. It was the fix officially went into 0.10.2. It's also in master, and it's also part of our nightly builds. So make sure you're updated so that you're not exposing yourself to that. The next thing is Angular 9 is in master now, which actually went fairly smoothly. There's some minor things that need to get fixed up that are related to that, but for the most part, it went in pretty well. And so that means that the work that I was working on with getting the Monaco editor integrated into Octant has been picked back up. So I've started working on that again this week and have made some progress there. So hopefully we'll have a pull request up to get that in relatively soon, later today or early tomorrow. And I think that once we have the new Monaco editor in place and some of the minor kind of UI weirdness things that have popped up since we landed Angular 9, we'll probably be cutting a release fairly soon. No set time, but we have enough in there. There's a lot of good features in there, and a lot of good stuff in the current current master that amount to a pretty nice release for everybody. So, and speaking of that, I wanted to have Milan kind of go over some of the recent updates to the logging.
Sounds good. It would be good if you can open 660. That's the epic that's tracking that. So we have some backdrop. Yeah, so I've been working on logging mostly for now, focused on search and filtering. And that's been partially done, implemented most functionality, but I'm still waiting for the final design. I touched base with Ross about that yesterday, so that's coming up soon. I hope that's still the plan. And also did some small fixes, like a time step was breaking up to the second line. That's not happening anymore. And yeah, so we now do support regex as well. There were some issues with that thing, so into pointing that out, I made it case insensitive, but now it does take case into account. So this is, I think, in pretty good shape once we have the final design, and I fixed some few small remaining issues to get into next release.
Hey Milan, can you send me some mock-ups or anything if you have like some screenshots? I'm assuming these are logs coming from the pod, right? These are pod logs, search and filtering.
Yes, they are tracked on pod level. I can send you the screenshot of current layout, but that's going to change soon. So Do you still want it though? Do you want me to?
Just send me what you have now, and when you update it, I'll
Sounds
gladly
good.
see that too. But yeah, you know that searching log search and filtering was something that we're missing. So I'm glad you picked it up, and good turnaround time too as well.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do that. How's this design going, Rust?
I'm going to work on that today.
Awesome.
So I can't imagine it being too much work, but still too early to like commit to anything. So I'm hoping I can get a pretty good progress today before I go on vacation for the rest of the week.
That would be good. Yeah, even if you don't, have the final, or if if there's something I can help you to make it faster, let me know.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And this is, so I pulled up got it there a little late after everyone was done talking because of logging into so many things. But here's the logging tab 660.
Yes.
So you can see the closeout issues here at the bottom. Quite a few have been closed out. This one in progress here is actually one that I'm working on, which is not actually related to the logger itself. It's related to the API and virtual nodes on Azure Kubernetes service. So that's something that I'm still looking into. It was fighting a little battle with AKS yesterday, and finally got it all set up and working with virtual nodes, and was able to actually get some of my deployments to deploy their workloads into a virtual node, which was like the first step to actually replicating and then fixing. So that's coming along. So moving on to as UI updates. So we've made quite a few just kind of minor improvements to the UI around just components that are being used and classes and using the correct clarity components. A lot of this work is based on work that Ross Fenrick did with creating some new mockups and just kind of making sure that we were using what was available in the clarity library as best that we could. So I wanted to just kind of show some of that quickly. This is based off current master, and I was just going to walk through it, and then Ross, if there's anything that you wanted to mention afterwards or during, just feel free. So this is the kind of what you see now when you land on Octant. You can see that the namespace dropdown has been moved over to fall in line with the nav here. We've changed this background when you're in dark versus light mode. So light mode before, the background, the top bar was still a dark color, and it created this hard contrast, which actually kind of made it difficult for your eyes to kind of see stuff. So we've lightened that up a little bit. And
hey,
also,
Wayne,
yeah.
the right drop down seems to be misaligned just a little bit.
I'll kick you from this call if you nitpick. No, I'm kidding. Yes, we know. It's quite obvious. Yes. Yes.
You keep pressing the dark and light. I'm thinking like, I don't like where the other thing is.
No, yeah, it's crooked. There's an issue for it. Yes. So again, that was one of the things. I think that actually happened when we moved to Angular 9. I don't think it's always been crooked like that. So I think Sam saw this like right out of the gate and was like, hey, that's crooked. And so, yeah, those are the minor Angular 9 things that I was mentioning that we're going to want to touch up before we cut a release from master. So yeah, we know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we changed up the labels as well. So now they're actually using the Clarity label selector or label component. And so they're not just buttons. It makes them a little more, changes the font, changes how they're outlined, changes how they highlight. So it's just a better way to actually use them and make sure that we're using the right components, because they will, this opens up, there's more issues around labeling, but this opens up the ability for us to easily deal with when labels get really long, and to have, like an ellipsis here that kicks out a list of all the labels, and it will style correctly kind of automatically instead of that list actually being filled with buttons. And so we were just able to kind of remove some CSS and stuff for custom handling of what were labels, but we were doing with buttons. So trying to think. I know there's some other work that has happened, but I can't recall all of it. I wonder. I might actually have the logging running on here too. I can show that real quick. Let's see. What about pod? Does pod have logs? Yeah, this pod has logs. I don't know if I have the latest.
That looks like the latest UI.
Okay, cool. So there's like I can now filter, and there's objects, and it will bounce me to the objects. We can also show only the lines that match, which is nice for when you're looking for a very specific thing. Like if I was like, oh, are these something with a cache? Oh, there it is right there, and you can just see the one line. So that's all work that Milan did.
Quick question: the display timestamp thing is not checked, but the timestamps are there.
Yeah, so there's two timestamps. There's the timestamp that actually comes in the logger itself. This is unrelated to, so like this is just the logging information being in that message.
Oh, okay, so that's the timestamp in the log. Got it.
Yeah. So like if I search for like trace and then I say show only filtered, and then I remove it, you can see that the specific.
Yeah, it doesn't have it. Got it.
Yeah. So.
Quick question while we are here. This logging view is always black. I mean, it has a black background regardless of the theme. And Sam and I were talking about this the other day, and we were wondering, is that the feature or bug?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that being able to have a lighter theme for the logging would be a good idea.
Okay.
I think some people are gonna have a hard time where they want the light mode and then you come in like this is hard to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even in a larger size, it's still pretty hard to see.
The blue variant you have for the banner might actually work better.
Yeah. So we can play around with that. I think that's definitely a good improvement. And I know another open issue is to make this logger expand to the length of the page and stuff like that. So there's but it's already more usable. Yeah, go ahead, Ross.
I was going to look into theming, like syntax theming for both the logger and for the YAML. Once we have Monaco in, I think you can do custom themes with that. Just kind of use like a clarity palette for both dark and light theme. So that's something I can work on. And I'll look around. Maybe someone has already done that with clarity too. So I'm going to look around for that.
Okay.
We'll see.
Sounds great. Sam, is there anything you wanted to mention or highlight?
Yeah, totally. So actually, do you still have that Octant
I do.
instance pulled up?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm working on changing out the navbar on the left. And one of the big notable changes is that we're going to be renaming this workloads on the very top under that namespace box to be applications per Ross's new design. And it makes sense because we have workloads in the sense of like a Kubernetes workload, but then we also have this other representation of workloads in our code base, which really is just give me a summary of all the applications that's running on the cluster. So I think for the first pass, we're just going to rename the menu entry, but I think eventually it'll bubble out to the rest of the code internally. And then we're also going to be changing out a ton of the icons. A lot of them are going to be collapsed up. And we're essentially going to be using these clarity icons instead of the old Kubernetes, I guess like the Kubernetes community icons, which we concluded that nobody actually recognizes or uses. So we're going to use something a bit more meaningful instead, especially when this menu is collapsed as well. So hopefully these new icons will catch on. I probably push up the PR with Nico's code probably sometime today as soon as the backend is done. There shouldn't be too much work left, and then there's some minor CSS tweaks that we're probably just going to fix over the course of the week. But that's something I'd like to get into this next release, and at least have some time sitting on masters, so then we kind of see if we want to tweak something in the meantime, we'd have adequate time to think about it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, this is great. This is another UI change that came out of the work that Ross mocked up, and then Nico did the front end changes for that. And yeah, as I mentioned, he's working on the back end changes. So I have it pulled up here. You can see what the new kind of nav is going to look like. And if you compare that to the old nav over here, in our opinion,
That's pretty sweet.
quite better.
Yeah.
So, okay. So any questions on any of those things from folks? Let's see. Let me make sure I'm looking at the chat. Doesn't look like there's anything. So, and let me look at the doc. Nothing there. Okay. So moving on, we are going to, well, we have this new repo. Actually, I already have it open. So there was some questions about getting a example repo for Octant plugins that wasn't part of the main Octant repository. There was a couple reasons behind this. One, it ensures that we don't have any tight dependencies to internal Octant things in plugins, which are external. And then the other part was that it created kind of a landing area for people to easily make suggestions, improvements, or submit ideas around plugins that aren't maybe like full features, but just more of like conventions or ideas on how to do things, which we can later link to and tie into our plugin documentation. So we have created this octant-example-plugins repository. There is an initial pull request up right now. This initial pull request creates 3 plugins. One is for demonstrating the actions plugin. The other one is a copy of the sample plugin from the Octant repo, and the final one is an example of writing a plugin using Python. So those will be hopefully merged into this main repo soon, and we will start to build out kind of our examples in this repository, and likely we'll take the example plugin that's currently in the main Octant repo. Maybe we'll make it a submodule so we can leave the easy build option there so people can install the test plugin quickly. But the actual sample plugin itself will come out of the Octant repo, which is an action item that came up during the last agenda or community meeting. So. Questions, comments there? Okay. And then finally, I wanted to just do some shout outs. So there was a couple things that came in from the community that were big deals, and the persistent volume printer. Thanks to Jordan and Andy for working on that, and we've got that merged in, and it's looking really good. So I really appreciate all of their hard work on that. We also have the multi-context logging from Jack Wink, and who was the same person that reported the security issue that we touched on at the beginning. So I want to call those out because were very, very good contributions, and we really appreciate it. So thank you. That's it. That's all I have. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add?
Hey, Wayne, this is Andy Schiefe. Jordan and I were talking about some of the oddness that we're doing and wondering if some of that could be resolved by doing a pull request for the defect, or I don't know if it was a defect, it was more of a enhancement request that I opened a while ago. We're kind of stitching together command line options for a couple of different programs, and it would be nice to be able to know which ones are specific to each one of them. And we were talking about maybe there would be a way to expose either the flags or the names of the command line options that would be going to each one of the programs. In the programs, it would be like a constant structure that would be available for those of us that would have to do such a thing. But before we went down that road, we were kind of curious if that was even an appropriate approach, or if that would be something that would be acceptable if we did put out something like that to be used in Octant.
I don't think I understand.
Okay.
So I would, if I think Jordan, you're really choppy.
Yeah. Slow connection there. Go ahead and finish what you were saying. It seems like I'm connected a little bit better now.
I was going to say, if you all wanted to write up so we have a proposals folder in Octant that you can submit PRs against, which is just a place to put markdown files around enhancement ideas or larger features that you want to put into Octant. If this is something that you think is useful, then I think getting like a more like asynchronous, like you write it up, people have time to digest it, read it, and give feedback, and we kind of iterate through that process would be the way to go. I'm happy to also listen to some like more detail on what this feature exactly is. But it sounds like it might be something that's larger that we want to do as a proposal.
Okay.
So the short of it, to put it a little bit simpler, is we have a command line wrapper kind of that we're writing for Octant. So we can utilize a couple extra flags for things like using an airship conf instead of a cube conf, that kind of thing, and using airship libraries to manage that stuff. And one of the things that we ran up against was having to basically hard code all the flags from Octant into that CLI tool, because currently the CLI flags for Octant are internal and not visible to other things. So one thing that would make it a little bit easier for us to make sure that we're utilizing all the flags Octant has and passing them easy is to be able to just init or initialize those flags from something that is visible externally, like just in a package file.
Is
that
it
makes sense?
Is it something you could do with environment variables? Because all of our flags map to environment variables as well.
Yeah, that's something that we can look into.
Because I was just thinking, like, if you could still have that file that had the values, like, you know, this equals this, and then at startup you could load that into the environment, and then before you launch the octant command, and then the octant command would read them and respect them. That might,
Sure.
that's something to try. If that doesn't work, then yeah, I think we can look into what other options there might be.
Sure. We can write up that proposal as well and link back to the code we're actually working on, which I think would make it make a little bit more sense. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. If there is no questions or more comments from anyone, then we will call this good.
Hey, I have a quick question for you, more for you, Wayne. So I think it might make sense at some point after we complete, the current stream of work, which is, the next release, the Monaco integration, the logging that we're working on, to kind of take stock and see if there's any big features we might want to invest in beyond like the incremental updates. Like for example, we might want to look at some network policy capabilities in Octant, kind of bring visibility into things that are more complex for developers to navigate if they were trying to look at them using kubectl. So that might be something that we can take stock. Obviously, we have some time to go now, but I just wanted to bubble it up so everybody's aware that might be something that I want us to look at.
Yeah, I think if there are folks who want that, I definitely encourage them to go and like either thumbs up or create issues or just like bring it to our attention in a way, because we definitely use the feedback in GitHub issues in the Octant Slack channel and from this community meeting to kind of prioritize what's going into the next set of work. So if you know people who are waiting for that and want that, just get them to, like, if you can encourage them to speak up so that we see it, or if you can do it on their behalf so that we see it in the issues, that would be excellent.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks, everybody. That was good. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Aaron.
Bye, bye.
Bye.